All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome into this week's edition of Financial Literacy Friday as part of the Bank of North Dakota's Smart With My Money campaign here every Friday in the month of October. We are joined with our expert in this field, Rachel Grossman from the Bank of North Dakota. Rachel, thanks again for making some time for us this week. Another exciting topic today, right?
Very much. Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Of course, yeah. I mean, we have to keep it going. We have to keep you coming back at this point. The people are getting used to you.
Absolutely.
We don't want to shake it up on them too much. But no, today's topic looks like it's emergency funds, which something that you never know how much you need it until it might be too late there. So what exactly is an emergency fund, and how much would somebody need to be in one?
Yeah, so I like to kind of define an emergency fund as just that funding that you're setting aside for the unexpected things that life throws at you. You know, the things that you don't maybe have factored into your normal everyday monthly budget. So things like your car breaking down, the furnace going out, you know, those things that you're going to have to pay for in the moment that you might not have exactly planned for. And so as far as how much to have saved, most of those big expenses that might come at you, it would cover things like unexpectedly losing a job, you know, then it gives you a few months buffer to find something new, get that funding coming back in, while still being able to cover all your expenses.
True. Last thing you want is to be in a spot like that. You mentioned the car. That's kind of my nightmare at this point, because it happened to me pretty recently. Car go down and then you're just palms up, don't know what to do.
Exactly.
But how can the Smart With My Money website, which is smartwithmymoney.nd.gov, how can that help me understand the topic of emergency accounts a little bit better?
Yeah, so there's a lot of really great content on there, you know, different articles and videos that you can interact with to kind of learn more about why you should have an emergency fund, what it's there for. And then there's also a really nice tool where you can kind of factor in, like, input what are all of your expenses, you know, what should you be planning for, and it'll kind of tell you then what should your emergency fund kind of be sitting at, what would be a good number for you.
It's very handy.
Absolutely.
And I was just talking about it a little bit ago, you know, we've all had these unexpected expenses, car repairs, broken appliances. I had a friend one time who their entire Christmas was all of a sudden a new water heater. So things like that. What is it about these moments where you just it just feels so financially stressful there?
Yeah, so, you know, obviously things like that pop up sometimes in life. You never want them to happen, but when we do, we would much rather it be a minor inconvenience where you're like, hey, I don't want to pay for this thing, but I've got the funds set aside, so like I can pay for it, it's gonna be okay, rather than not having those emergency savings, and then you're in that situation and now it's a complete panic moment for you because you're thinking, hey, I need my car, you know, fixed to get to work, or I need a new fridge, or, you know, whatever the case might be, but you're not sure how you're going to afford it in that moment, and so it just becomes this absolute kind of scramble of how do I make this work. We don't want that to be the situation, which is kind of why we preach this idea of have those emergency funds set aside, be prepared for those unexpected moments.
Obviously, it's an important thing for anybody to have, no matter what, you know, kind of situation they're in. But for single income households, how much more important is it for them to have this kind of emergency fund set up?
Very important. You know, I mentioned that possibility of maybe losing a job. You know, if you're a single income household and you lose that one income that's coming in, it suddenly becomes crunch time of you need something new right now to be able to keep up with those, you know, day-to-day expenses that you have, where, you know, if you're a two-income household, you know, you maybe are just having to cut back a little bit and you can survive on the one income until the second person finds something new.
Right.
But when you just got that one stream of income, if that goes away, your emergency fund is going to be absolutely crucial to kind of keep you going, keep up with those bills until you're able to find a new stream of income.
Now, we mentioned that rule of thumb of 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up. For those of you who may just be joining, welcome to Financial Literacy Friday. This is Rachel Grossman from the Bank of North Dakota. In case you haven't been able to watch this whole thing, you'll be able to just a second as soon as we finish up this live interview. But back to where we were at. You know, the idea of saving up 3 to 6 months of expenses can be discouraging for a lot of people, or at least stressful.
Yeah.
What's a realistic timeline you would give for reaching that goal?
Yeah, so obviously that's going to kind of depend on the person and what their 3 to 6 months of expenses look like. So the way I kind of like to break that down is very first step is you sit down and you go through and add up what are all of your essential expenses. So rent, mortgage, car payment, whatever that looks like for you, those bills and those expenses that you absolutely cannot be missing. So get a good picture of what does 1 month of essential expenses look like for you. Set that aside. And then we kind of like to recommend, if at all possible, save 10% of your income per month for emergency funds. So, depending on what your income level looks like, you're setting aside 10%. Do the math then and figure out, hey, if I'm setting aside this much every month, how many months is it going to take me, or how long will it take me to reach that month of essential income expenses, and then multiply that by 3 to 6, kind of wherever you're comfortable with, to have 3 to 6 months of expenses. So like I said, that timeline is definitely going to look different for everyone.
Right.
But if you're able to kind of stick to that 10% savings, that'll kind of get you on the right track.
What kind of advice would you give to someone who, just the feeling of saving 10% of your income every month? For someone that doesn't feel like they can save that much, what advice would you have for them?
Absolutely. Like I said, there's kind of like a number that we throw out as a if you're able to.
Okay.
We definitely know that not everyone is in a situation where they can do that. And so if that's the situation, hey, that's okay. In that case, then we just recommend doing what you're able to. So even if it's just a little bit every month, $10, $20 is all you can afford in a month, hey, that's okay. You're at least taking a step forward. You're doing something. You're working towards that goal of eventually saving up for that 3 to 6 months of expenses. So just kind of looking at, any area that you can cut back in your life. Maybe it's going out to eat a little bit less, maybe doing a little bit less shopping. If you're able to save just a little bit here and there, then you can then funnel into that emergency fund instead. That's going to really set you up for success.
Every little bit helps, right?
Exactly.
Where is the best place to keep your emergency fund? What should people kind of look for when they're choosing an account with that in mind?
Yeah. So obviously, when an emergency comes about, it's something that you weren't expecting. And you're typically needing to pay for something or fund something kind of really quickly in the moment. So wherever you're keeping your emergency savings, we want to make sure that it's going to be an account that's easily accessible. So, for example, a CD might not be the best option for you because those are usually tied up for a certain number of months, but unless you have a fee. So you want to look for something that's going to be easily accessible, ideally with no fee to have that withdrawal. And then we like to see something that doesn't have a minimum amount attached to the account.
Makes sense.
If you are in an account that has a minimum amount attached, you got to plan for that then. So save your 3 to 6 months of expenses plus that minimum amount that has to stay in the account. So typically that's going to look like things like checkings accounts, savings account, money market fund. Are all easily accessible when you need them.
Gotcha. Now, for our viewers out there watching this on our digital platforms looking to grow their emergency fund more quickly, what are some of the more practical tips that they can start using today to kind of get that going quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned just kind of looking at your expenses and seeing, hey, are there areas that I can maybe cut back just a little bit on that you can then, shift those funds into emergency funds instead. A nice one that I always like to recommend is, hey, if you're ever getting a bonus at work, or a tax refund, instead of thinking of this as kind of like extra money that you can go, spend on fun things, just shift that right away into your emergency fund, and then you're not even having to think about it. It's just an extra little boost to help you reach that savings goal.
How big of a difference can that be, using the tax refunds or the bonuses?
Yeah.
How big of a difference can those make in getting this emergency fund set up more quickly?
It can be huge.
Yeah.
If you're just on a normal basis saving just that 10%, maybe that's just a couple $100s per month that you're setting aside. On average, a tax refund is often around $3,000. So if you're able to just kind of put that lump sum in, that's going to really kind of skyrocket that savings goal.
Big boost right there.
For sure.
So rather than going and buying shoes like I would do, not spending all of it on shoes, but a good chunk, maybe set up an emergency fund instead.
Exactly. Might be a better use for you.
Gotcha. Well, perfect. Thank you again for making time for us this Friday, Rachel. Really good advice here, and something that, like we mentioned earlier in the interview, it's something you may not think about until it's too late. Just kind of how how much would you recommend just, kind of taking these steps here to get that emergency fund going and get it a little bit healthier?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend, just that little bit of pre-planning now, setting a little bit aside every month, is really going to be huge for you when you do have that unexpected life event. Rather than being in that panic situation where you're not sure how you're going to afford it, instead you know that, hey, you've got this emergency fund set aside. It's going to be, maybe annoying to have to use those funds, but that they're there for you because you plan for this event, and so it's all going to be okay.
It's a good annoyance, right?
Exactly.
Perfect. Rachel, thank you very much for making time for us again. Thank you for joining us on this week's edition of Financial Literacy Friday here on Valley News Now. We'll be back next week with Rachel, and we're going to have more coming up on our Valley News Now networks tonight. Watch it on our web streams, on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, your smart TV. We're everywhere. And of course, we're going to have our shows coming up tonight at 4, 5, 6, 9, 10. We got you covered. Stay tuned right here at Valley News, not live, but for now, for Valley News Now, I'm Devin Fry.